Hello, and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. We're continuing our look at Mirrodin. This time we're going to look at the Little Bashers deck, which is a mono-white deck, which, it's basically a white weenie deck. Let's look at the deck list here. So 25 creatures, which is sort of to be expected for a white weenie deck. 8 artifacts, 3 instants, 2 enchantments, 22 planes. And then we got a mana curve off to the side there, very low mana curve, which is to be expected for a white weenie deck, I suppose. So let's look at these cards. So one of the rares of the deck, Auriok Steel Shaper. So 2 mana for 1/1. Equip costs you pay cost 1 less. So Mirrodin is the set where equipment was introduced into the game. And honestly, I think some of the best equipment in the game is actually was introduced in Mirrodin. It felt really strong when it was introduced because I think people saw it and like going, "Oh, whoa, that's better than like enchantments that go on creatures' auras." They weren't auras yet. That I think is we still got a couple of sets before they become auras rules wise, but I remember people getting really excited about equipment because it just seemed to be, very low downside. Because you could put on a creature, and if the creature died, you kept your equipment. So yeah. So Auriok Steel Shaper, so it makes your equip cost cheaper, which is good because in this deck, a lot of the equip costs are quite cheap anyway, so it would have made essentially equipment costs free. And as long as he's equipped, your soldiers and knights get +1/+1, which is good because pretty much every creature in the deck is either a soldier or a knight. So then we have a full playset of Leonin Denguard, 2 mana for a 1/3. If it's equipped, it gets +1/+1 in Vigilance. So I like this. There's this kind of sub theme of these kind of small white creatures that get a bonus when they become equipped, which I think is really cool. We see that a lot in like in Zendikar as well, which is, I mean, that's way in the future. We'll get to it when we get to it, but that was the thing of the core that they had like an equipment sub theme. If they were equipped, they would get various bonuses and abilities. Leonin Denguard, I think it is pretty solid. I think even when it's not equipped, like at the time, 2 mana for just a 1/3, like perfectly okay. And the fact it's got upside actually makes it pretty good. And also having a full playset of them is really nice. So the other rare of the deck is Loxodon Punisher, 4 mana for a 2/2 Elephant Soldier. It gets +2/+2 for every equipment attached to it. Yep. Pretty underwhelming, I think, by today's standards. I think this would probably be an uncommon these days. But I mean, that's still, I think it's a pretty good rare to have in this deck, when equipment is first introduced, shows the obvious synergies. Yeah, I like it. I like Loxodon Punisher. Just, gives the deck some much needed muscle. And then nearly a full playset of Sky Hunter Cub, 3 mana for a 2/2. If it's equipped, it has +1/+1 in the flying, and obviously what other ability and whatever bonuses the equipment gives it. Again, I think like pretty solid. So a few more equipment payoffs. So Tajnar Swordsmith, 4 mana for a 2/3. When it enters battlefield, you can pay X. If you do, set your library for an equipment card that costs X or less, and put it straight into play. I think that's really good. It helps you. It's a shame there's only one of them in the deck. I would have liked to have seen a second one, but the fact that you can tutor up your equipment, I think, is really good. Even him getting like a Leonin Scimitar or a Bone Splitter, I think is worth it because the fact it goes straight into play. I think Tajnar Swordsmith is pretty good. 2 Mer Adapters. This is basically just like a smaller Loxodon Punisher. Just 3 mana for a 1/1 Mer. Gets +1/+1 for every equipment attached to it. It's fine. I think kind of here. I think just to fill space, honestly. And 2 Auriok Blade Wardens, 2 mana for a 1/1. Tap target creature gets +X/+X till end of turn, where X is his power. That's I think pretty good in a deck where you've got lots of equipment. You could potentially whack all the equipment on him, and then boost his power really high, and then you've got like a pretty because all it requires tapping. It doesn't require like a mana cost or anything else like that. And then you can just give +X/+X at will whenever you need it, which I think is pretty good. And then 2 Slith Ascendant. So the Slith are a weird strike. There's 6 Slith because there's an artifact one. I was going to say there's 5. They're super weird. I'm not sure what they're meant to be. They look like weird, like Silent Hill monsters, honestly. But they all have this ability, which whenever they deal combat damage to a player, they get a +1/+1 counter on them, so they steadily grow up. So this one flies. They all have like various abilities. I think most of them are in the various other pre-constructed decks. I think the Slith Ascendant's probably the best one just because it has an evasion ability. I think the blue one might have as well, but anyway. Yeah, it's fine. This is the shame it doesn't get any kind of. I mean, it's fine to have an evasive creature that you can put equipment on, but it's not getting the bonuses from the Aureok Blade Warden, or the not the Blade Warden, Steel Shaper. That's the one. Yeah, because obviously not a soldier or a knight. Anyway, 2 Leonin Sky Hunter. I remember this causing a bit of a bit of a stir when it was, because this is 2/2 flyer for 2. With no drawback or anything. Yeah, and the fact it's uncommon is actually, because I think this is common these days. It's definitely common just because it's just not that impressive these days. But at the time, just a 2/2 flyer for 2, pretty impressive. Yeah, so gives you another good evasive creature in the deck. Single Sky Hunter Patrol, 4 mana for a 2/3 flying first strike. Yep, I think that's pretty solid. Yeah, like nothing wrong with these cards. They're just like really solid, honestly. And they're all great things to put like the various equipment in the deck on. 2 Aureok Transfixer, just 1/1. 1 white tap target artifact. That has some utility. Typically, I like these decoy abilities to be able to tap down creatures, but yeah, we're in a artifact heavy set here, so tapping down artifacts. Yeah, that's going to get quite a good number of creatures, and it's also going to get like utility artifacts, like we'll see in some of these other decks. It doesn't stop equipment though, because tapping equipment doesn't stop it going on to things. And then 2 soldier replicas. So this cycle of these replicas, there's sort of one aligned to each color. This one is one of my favorites. I like this one and the wizard replica. So this is 3 mana for a 1/3. Pay 1 color, 1 white. You can sacrifice it to do 3 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. So 3 damage is like a fairly decent chunk. Would be quite a deterrent to most enemy creatures. Then we have a couple of gold Murs. That's just I think pretty much every deck has a Mur. One type of Mur. It's 2/2. It's 2 mana for a 1/1. Just taps to give you colored mana. Yep, it's fine. All right, and then moving on to spells. So we have 2 Altars Light, which is 4 mana instant, exile, an artifact or enchantment, which is very overcosted by today's standards. I think it would have been overcosted by standards back in the day as well, because this doubled the cost of disenchant. And I don't really think it needs to be, honestly. I think it could have been just 1 extra mana, it would have been fine. But, I guess at the time, it was deemed okay, I suppose. I still think it's a bit expensive. A single Roar of the Car, so 2 mana. So choose one. The creature you control get +1/+1 till end turn, or untap all creatures you control, and it has an ability called Entwine. Entwine for 1 color and 1 mana. So if you pay the Entwine cost, you get to do both modes. I love Entwine. I think it is a criminally underused mechanic. I really, really wish Entwine was brought back in some way, because I think it's such a fun thing too. Because it's kind of like it's kind of a combination of it's like Kicker, right? In the fact you get something else out of it, but it lets you pick both these options. I just think Entwine is great, and it can lend itself to these kind of fun cards, because in isolation both those effects are fine on their own, but when they're combined, much more interesting. But yeah, I think Roar of the Cost, but perfectly good card to have in a white weenie deck like this. 2 Arrests, so 3 mana. It's basically super pacifism because it locks down activated abilities as well. So yeah, that's good. I like Arrest. So now we get on to the actual equipment. So there's actually not that many. I think there's only 8 in the deck. So that's the one thing I guess you would have wanted to do if you got this pre-constructed deck. You definitely would have wanted to add to the number of equipment you had. So 2 Leonin Scimitar. Yep, just 1 mana. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Equip 1. Perfect. Perfectly simple, elegant bit of equipment to have in the first set to introduce equipment. Bone Splitter I think is a bit better, just because it just gives a pure power boost. So 1 mana gives +2/+0. Equip 1 again. Still really good. Bone Splitter I think is a bit better than Leonin Scimitar. And then Mirrodin Longbow, 1 mana. Equipped creature gets tapped to do 1 damage, basically turns them into Prodigal Sorcerer, gives them a ping ability, and equip 3. So yeah, that's all perfectly fine. And then some slightly more interesting equipment, I would say. So Banshee's Blade, 2 mana, equipped creature gets +1/+1 for every charge counter on it. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to anything, doesn't have to be to players or anything, you put a charge counter on it. So this is pretty, this would be pretty good to get down early. It's nice that that it grows itself. Like the counters they don't go on a creature, they go on the equipment itself. So like this could build up, throughout the game, progressive getting bigger and bigger as you keep swapping it between creatures. So yeah, I think Banshee's, but I've never actually seen it played, and which is a shame because I think it's pretty interesting design. I think it would be difficult to deal with as the game goes on. Loxodon Warhammer. So this is a little infamous because this was when they were doing previews even for Mirrodin. This was like the first equipment they previewed. Like this is what equipment is, and this is the rules for equipment. And they kind of set a false expectation because Loxodon Warhammer is crazy good. It is insane that it's uncommon here, and every other time it's been printed, it's been rare, and rightly so, because 3 to cast, 3 to equip, so quite cheap, and it gives so much. It gives +3/+0. It gives trample, and it gives lifelink, basically. Which is crazy. Like such good boosts for like not much, and I think this really. I was like, oh my god, everyone's equipment's going to be crazy. Was what people were thinking, and then it came out, and obviously equipment is fine. But yeah, it was mad that this was the first equipment they kind of showed off. But yeah, Loxodon Warhammer is fantastic. It's almost worth buying. You would have bought almost a second copy of this deck just to guarantee getting another Loxodon Warhammer. But again, at the time it was uncommon, which is insane. So it would have been, I think, pretty easy to get more of them. And then a single Fire Shrieker, 3 mana, equipped creature has double strike, equip 2. Yeah, again, like perfectly simple, elegant piece of equipment. So that's the deck. So I think it's actually pretty good. Maybe a few changes I would have made to it. So I think Leonin Elder would have been alright. So this is a 1/1 cat cleric. Whenever an artifact enters play, you can gain a life, which is all right. I think Razor Barrier is a instant that can give protection from a color or protection from artifacts to something until end of turn, which I always think giving protection at instant speed is a super good combat trick. Volshock Battle Gear could have been another potential equipment. So this just gives like +3/+3. So it's just basically upscaled Leonin Scimitar. But like +3/+3 is a really sizable boost. Lightning Greaves, absolutely classic Lightning Greaves. 2 mana, it gives haste and shroud. I think it equips for 0 as well, which is so good, so good. Leonin Sun Standard. I was umming and ahhing about this because I think the rares in this deck are absolutely fine. I do think Loxodon Punisher should probably be uncommon rather than rare. But I think Leonin Sun Standard could have fit in here instead of the Loxodon Punisher. Just the fact that it's this it's an artifact that you can spend mana and you just give all your creatures +1/+1 till end of turn. I think that would have been maybe fine instead of that. And Volshock Gauntlets is another piece of equipment. 2 mana gives +4/+2, which is a huge boost. But then the creature doesn't untap during the control's untap step, but you put it on the Leonin Den Guard who has vigilance, and then suddenly you've got what? So it's 1/3 normally, 2/4 for being equipped, 6/6, 6/6 with vigilance on potentially like attacking on turn 3 or 4. Yeah, that would be pretty good, I think. But yeah, these are all easy changes you would have made. So in summary, I think this is pretty good. Like we're going to see a few White Weenie decks because it's a very popular strategy and archetype and all that kind of things. This one at least does something a bit different by having equipment. And for it being kind of the first deck to use equipment as a theme, I think it does a pretty good job of showing it off and getting kind of people excited about it. Like if you're using Mirrodin and you wanted to explore the new cards, and I think this does a pretty good job of doing it. So yeah, but what did you think of the deck after seeing the deck list, after seeing the review? Like, did you have this deck and did you change it? Did you do you have any experience using it? I'd really like to know. Stick a comment down below, but I'll be back next time to look at another Mirrodin theme deck. But until then, thank you for watching and listening, and have a good day.